In today's video, we journey back in time to uncover the secrets of the past. Welcome, to a story written in the sands of history. Richard the Lionheart, warrior king of England, 1157 to 1199. Richard I of England, known to history as Richard the Lionheart, French, Richard Cœur de Lion, was one of the most iconic figures of the High Middle Ages. Revered for his courage, military prowess, and chivalric ideals, Richard became a central figure of the Third Crusade and a legendary symbol of knightly virtue. Though he spent little time in England, his fame as a warrior king overshadowed many of his contemporaries. Early life and background. Birth and lineage. Richard was born on September 8, 1157, in Oxford, England, as the third legitimate son of King Henry II of England and Eleanor of Aquitaine, one of the most powerful and wealthy women in Europe. He was of Angevin descent and part of what historians now refer to as the Angevin Empire, which included England, much of western France, and parts of Ireland. From his parents, Richard inherited a complex political and cultural legacy. Henry II was a brilliant strategist and ruthless ruler, while Eleanor, former Queen of France, was cultured and politically astute. Richard's royal blood gave him strong claims not only in England but across vast territories in France, including Aquitaine, which would play a key role in his future. Education and personality. Raised in the Duchy of Aquitaine, Richard grew up speaking Langue d'Occitane, Occitan, and French, rather than English. He was deeply influenced by the courtly culture of southern France, especially the ideals of chivalry, poetry, and feudal loyalty. His mother ensured he was well educated in statecraft and the arts, but Richard's true passion lay in warfare. By his teenage years, he had already developed a reputation for bravery and military leadership. 2. The road to power. Rebellion against Henry II. By the 1170s, tensions grew within the Plantagenet family. Henry II had a habit of granting titles and lands to his sons without giving them real power. In 1173, Richard joined his brothers, Henry the Young King and Geoffrey of Brittany, in a major rebellion against their father. Although the rebellion was ultimately crushed, it revealed Richard's ambition and his willingness to defy authority to gain power. Following the rebellion, Henry II gave Richard control over Aquitaine in 1174. He spent the next decade consolidating his rule, quelling rebellions among the local nobility, and proving his military capabilities. Rivalry with his brothers. Richard's relationship with his brothers remained volatile. After the death of Henry the Young King in 1183, a new struggle emerged between Richard and his younger brother John, whom Henry II favored. Richard allied with Philip II of France, Henry's rival, and launched a campaign against his own father. In 1189, their combined forces forced Henry to capitulate. The aging king died shortly afterward, broken in spirit. Richard was now heir to the Plantagenet throne. 3. Richard as King of England. Accession and coronation. Richard was crowned King of England on September 3, 1189, in Westminster Abbey. Though he inherited an expansive and wealthy empire, he had little interest in governing. Instead, his focus was on the Third Crusade, a grand military expedition to recapture Jerusalem, which had fallen to Saladin in 1187. Raising funds for the crusade. Preparing for the crusade required vast sums of money. Richard raised funds by selling lands, offices, and titles. Taxing the population heavily. Emptying the royal treasury. Making truces with enemies, like William the Lion of Scotland. It was said that Richard would have sold London if he could find a buyer. 4. The Third Crusade, 1189 to 1192. A European effort. The Third Crusade was launched by the three most powerful Christian monarchs of the time, Richard I of England, Philip II of France, and Frederick Barbarossa of the Holy Roman Empire. Their goal was to retake Jerusalem from Saladin. Frederick drowned en route in Asia Minor, and Philip and Richard soon developed a contentious rivalry, especially after the death of Philip's sister, Alice, who was once betrothed to Richard. Their alliance quickly deteriorated, leaving Richard to lead the crusade alone. Siege of Acre, 1191. Richard arrived in the Holy Land in 1191 and played a pivotal role in the Siege of Acre, one of the most important battles of the crusade. The Muslim garrison surrendered after a brutal siege. Richard ordered the execution of 2,700 Muslim prisoners, a controversial act still debated by historians. Battle of Arsuf, 1191. One of Richard's greatest military victories was at the Battle of Arsuf on September 7, 1191, where he defeated Saladin's forces decisively. His tactical brilliance and personal bravery earned admiration even from his enemies. Negotiations and end of the crusade. Despite repeated attempts, Richard was unable to retake Jerusalem. Facing logistical problems, disease, and dwindling support, Richard negotiated a truce with Saladin in 1192. The treaty allowed Christian pilgrims to visit Jerusalem, though the city remained under Muslim control. Richard departed the Holy Land in October 1192, hailed as a hero of Christendom, though some saw the crusade as a partial failure. 5. Captivity and ransom. Capture in Austria. On his return to England, Richard was shipwrecked and forced to travel overland through hostile territory. Disguised, he was recognized and captured by Duke Leopold V of Austria, a crusader rival he had insulted at Acre. Leopold turned him over to Emperor Henry VI, who held Richard prisoner in Germany. Ransom and release. Henry demanded a ransom of 150,000 marks, a colossal sum, roughly equivalent to several $billion today. England was heavily taxed again, and the country nearly bankrupted itself to secure his release. Richard was finally freed in February 1194, after 14 months in captivity. 6. Return to power and later reign, 1194 to 1199. Conflict with John and Philip. While Richard was imprisoned, his brother John, with support from Philip II, tried to seize the English throne. Upon his return, Richard forgave John, partly for political reasons, and focused on defending his continental possessions in France, especially Normandy. Richard spent the remaining 5 years of his life fighting Philip II, rebuilding castles, notably Château Gallard, and strengthening his hold on the Angevin territories. Administrative legacy. Though he spent only 6 months of his 10-year reign in England, Richard appointed capable ministers and left much governance to others. His justiciar, Hubert Walter, maintained law and order, tax collection, and royal justice in Richard's absence. Richard's reign solidified the power of the English monarchy, even if his own interest in domestic affairs was limited. 7. Death and burial. The fatal siege. In 1199, Richard besieged the castle of Caille-Chabrol in Limousin, a minor fortress where he believed treasure was hidden. On March 26, 1199, he was struck by a crossbow bolt fired by a boy defending the castle. Though initially not fatal, the wound became gangrenous. On April 6, 1199, at the age of 41, Richard the Lionheart died. Legacy in death. Richard was buried at Fontevraud Abbey in Anjou, at his father's feet. His heart was placed in Rouen, and his entrails at Caylis. 8. Legacy and historical significance. The ideal knight. Richard's reputation as the ultimate chivalric king took root during his lifetime and flourished afterward. He was celebrated in chansons de geste and medieval romances. Depicted as noble, fearless, and honorable. Admired even by his Muslim adversaries, Saladin reportedly respected him deeply. Criticism and controversy. Despite his fame, Richard's reign was marked by neglect of England, which he treated as a source of revenue. Excessive taxation, leading to hardship among his subjects. Brutality in war, including mass executions. Modern historians have revised his image, portraying him as a brilliant warrior, but a poor administrator and indifferent ruler. Cultural legacy. Robin Hood legends, Richard appears as the absent good king who returns to set things right, while his brother John is the villain. Lionheart as a symbol, his epithet became a lasting symbol of bravery and strength. Military architecture, his building projects, like Château Gallard, influenced European castle design. The Crusades were a series of religious wars sanctioned by the Latin Church between the 11th and 13th centuries, aimed primarily at recapturing the Holy Land from Muslim rule. These campaigns became some of the most defining episodes of the medieval world, deeply influencing European, Middle Eastern, and even Asian history. The word crusade derives from the Latin cruciata, meaning marked with the cross. The Crusades were driven by a mixture of religious fervor, political ambition, economic interest, and social pressures, and they left behind a complex legacy of both conflict and cultural exchange. The rise of Islam and the Byzantine Empire. By the 7th century, Islamic armies had conquered vast territories, including Jerusalem and much of the eastern Mediterranean. For centuries, Christians had been able to visit the Holy Land, but political changes and the rise of more hostile regimes, particularly the Seljuk Turks, led to growing concerns. The Byzantine Empire, weakened by defeats like the Battle of Manzikert, 1071, appealed to the West for help against Muslim expansion. Pope Urban II's call, 1095. At the Council of Clermont in 1095, Pope Urban II issued a powerful call to arms. He urged Western knights to take up the cross and journey to the east to aid their fellow Christians and liberate Jerusalem from Muslim control. This became the genesis of the First Crusade. The Pope promised spiritual rewards, including remission of sins, to all who participated. His message resonated widely, igniting one of the most massive mobilizations in medieval history. The Crusades were one of the defining movements of the Middle Ages, combining religious devotion with military aggression and leaving a legacy of both heroism and brutality. They reshaped the relationship between Christianity and Islam, influenced European society, and opened new channels of trade and cultural exchange. Though their military objectives ultimately failed, the Crusades' impact on global history remains profound.